Hello, my most amazing artists. Welcome back to Art with Miss Yazel. So fifth grade, it's been a long time since we've done anything, and the last video that I recorded for you guys was a lesson on op art, optical illusions, and this is the one that we were doing. You were supposed to try to create this this sphere looking like it's pushing through the paper, and we talked about the fact that op art is an optical illusion, and most art is, because you're trying to trick somebody's eye into thinking something that is on the page is three-dimensional when it is really on a flat surface. So there's lots of examples of optical illusions and tricking people's eyes. There's some pretty amazing art out there that looks really cool. I'm thinking of some sidewalk chalk that I saw that looked like they had drawn something that goes down into under the sidewalk, and it's really cool. It's pretty convincing. So we're not learning about zoom expectations because that's what you did. I talked to you a little bit about during the Zoom that we had on Monday. And if you did not join us for that, remember that every Monday we're going to be doing that as long as we are still virtual. Now, if we are hybrid, we will not be Zooming because we will be teaching. So I am learning to draw using shapes, lines, colors, and space is what we're going to focus on. And I talked to you a little bit about that. A few people who were in the Zoom, we talked about space. I'm going to go over that again because we didn't have very many people. So creating the illusion of space, you can do that. But one way you can do that is by creating shadows on your objects in your picture. So when we talked about creating forms and shading forms, we practiced that when you were in third, fourth. We didn't get to practice that this year. Maybe we did in person a little bit. But the sphere shows you how someone could shade and shadow it to create a look of 3 dimensions. And it actually goes on to name the parts of the shading and shadows, like the cast shadow that is the shadow that the object is casting on the surface that it is sitting on, and then highlight where the light is kind of reflecting off of the object or creating a really bright spot on the object. So adding light and shadow to the surface of objects to mimic the way real life objects would appear in the same lighting. So you can see this picture of a still life that someone colored has some really convincing shadows to make it look realistic. So what's another way we can create the illusion of space? Well, if we're on a flat surface and we're trying to create the look of 3D, then we're going to draw in a way that creates that look. Like you're going to draw a point back into space and draw lines going back to it so that it looks like it's going back into the distance. That's called one-point perspective. There's also 2-point perspective. This cube is drawn in 2 points. These lines are going back to a point over here, and these lines are going back to a point over here. So you can use perspective, and that's a way of drawing using lines to show the depth of something and how deep it is going back into space, and make it look like it's receding or going back into space. So 3D space is actually where you take something and you use it to create something that's actually 3-dimensional. So it would be sculptures, installations, which is when artists create something and then they install it in a certain spot that is called an installation. And then performance art, which would be where you're performing the art, and product designs, like people who design products for a living have to deal with 3D space. The 3 dimensions can be measured with length, width, and depth. So creating illusion of space in a picture is, we've talked about this in a landscape. So the placement of the object. So if the red circle is lower in the picture, then we're assuming that it is closer to us, because we assume that the bottom of the picture is the part that is closest to us, which is the foreground. So where you place the objects in the picture, low or high, will also tell people whether things are further away or closer to us. Another way to create the illusion of space is by size. So again, the same picture shows placement and size. It's got objects that are closer to us, they're lower in the picture and higher in the picture, and then there's the size of the objects. The trees are smaller as they go back into the distance. So we try to create that illusion of depth or space by the size of the objects we draw. So what you're going to be doing today is trying to create the illusion of space and creating the look of 3 dimensions using a barn as an example. So I know that lots of us have seen barns and there's different shapes to them, but we're going to try to draw the simplest form of a barn. And if you want to try a harder or more difficult one, then I will provide you with some pictures to look at to draw those barns. But I'm going to demonstrate drawing one of these barns that's very simplest, and we're going to try to create the look of 3 dimensions on this barn and in the picture. So we're going to create a landscape that's kind of snowy and has a barn in it so that we can practice our skills of 1-point perspective. So I need you to get marker, pencil, if you don't have a marker, a black crayon. You're going to need a brown crayon because you see lots of brown in the trees here. You're going to need red, and if you want to get like a light brown, this color that they've got on the snow that's kind of looks like dirty snow to me. But so red, black, blue, brown. Gather up your materials, and you need a pencil and some paper. So meet me back here. Okay, so you need a ruler, a pencil, a piece of paper, probably an eraser, because this is something that a lot of you probably don't have a lot of experience with. I'm hoping that you are a little bit familiar because we've talked a little bit about drawing things in 3 dimensions. So what we're going to do is, I had planned to do 1-point perspective, but I think you guys can handle 2. So what we're doing is we're going to create a border around the edge of our paper with a pencil. It's about a finger's width wide all the way around. Okay, I'm going to draw a dot at 4 inches at the edge of the paper. So I'm lining it up with the line I made. I'm going 4 inches from the bottom of the paper. So then I'm going to draw a straight line across. They should line up. Something went wrong. 0, 4. That one's there. 4. Oops. So I did not measure correctly. So now draw lightly so you can erase. Having a horizon line. My ruler has a crack in it. So a light horizon line to start this drawing of this barn. So we're going to use these 2 points to make all of our other lines so that everything is in perspective. That means it's the correct size, and when it's going to look like it's coming toward us in the picture. So it's, as it goes away, it looks like it's going back into the distance. So first line we're going to make is put the 0 into the ruler, the bottom of the page, and slide it to the middle, then draw a vertical line from the 3-inch mark to the 6-inch mark. Now we're going to go from about 2.5 to 5. I'm just going to slide it down a little bit because my paper is not quite as big as I would like. Now we're going to put the 0 end of the ruler at the end of the line you just drew, and we're going to line up this and with the dot, which is over here at the horizon line. Not that dot that I drew by mistake, but we're going to go line it up. We're going to draw for about a 2-inch line. So wherever I start, I'm going to start at 1. So a 2-inch line would go there. So then I'm going to do the same thing at the top of this, another 2-inch line. So if I start at 2, then in 2 inches, go 2 inches, and I'm going to go stop at 4. Basically, since I can't push my ruler all the way over, I've got something in the way over here. So I'm just, this is a 3-inch line. This is a 2-inch line. Okay. So now we're going to go over here and we're going to use this dot and the top of this edge to make another side of the barn. So the barn's going back into the distance. Okay. So I'm going to make the barn longer than it is wide. I'm trying to make it about the end about the same. Even if you don't get this exact, just make these 2 lines end at about the same place, because we're going to draw another vertical line right here. So we've got this side and this side. So if I erase this line, we've got 2 sides of the barn showing. Okay, so this would be like the front where the door is, and this would be the side of the barn. Okay, so we're going to go, and in the middle of this front section, we're going to go about I'm going to put a mark right here, and we're going to go make the peak of the roof come up to about here. That's about 3 1/4. So the top of the roof, I want it to be there. So I'm going to go from the edge of this side and this side. So there's the peak. Now we're going to have to line it up with the dot over here and the top of the barn. So it's going back at a pretty steep angle. And then this one is going to be the same angle as this peak right here, the peak of the roof. So I should have made it go back a little further. Okay, so can you see how that is, looks like a really long barn, doesn't it? May have made it a little too long, but that's okay. So somewhere in the distance, we're probably going to have fences, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, we're talking about making this 3-dimensional in space. And this could have been smaller and in the background, or larger and in the foreground of the picture, wherever you wanted to. But basically, you get the idea of how to draw the actual barn itself. So the top of the door is going to follow the top of the front, right? So we've got down. This is going back into the distance. That's why it looks, because we're looking at it sideways. So which way do the roof lines go in your barn? You decide. So what if you had something coming forward into the picture? What if you had a fence that you wanted to add into this picture, and you want the fence to be in perspective as well? Then you probably want to use this dot again to draw your fence. Now the fence probably wouldn't be that close, but or if you wanted a road coming from the distance coming forward. Maybe it's coming, and then maybe there's some mountains or hills back here to create a little bit more interest. Maybe there's a big field out here, and there's a fence that comes along the edge here. Make the fence go back. If there's a fence behind the barn, do you see that? So we could do fences back here. You get the idea. Maybe my fence is a little crooked. Maybe I would like it that way because, you know, all fences aren't perfect. So basically you're going to add details to the barn, possibly boards that are making up the sides. All of those lines are going back toward that. I'm lining it up over here, and I'm starting it where I want to up here, but I'm just going to keep moving it down until I get all those lines drawn correctly. So don't guess at it. Try to draw them correctly. Some barn pictures, the siding goes down. So if you want it to go down, then I've seen many in Kentucky like that. But you could make the siding go down if you'd like, and that you won't have to go back to that point every time. You could probably do the roof a little different too. So maybe the roof is coming down at an angle. Okay. Maybe you're going to add details like some framing or different details to your door. If I were using a ruler, this might end up looking a little straighter. Okay, so I'm going to have to line it up with this again. Yeah, my doors are not right. They do not look right at all. I had them a little bit too angled, I do believe. There we go. That looks better. I'm lining it up each time with that dot over here. This dot will help me keep my lines correct and in perspective. So everything on this side is going back toward this dot. Everything on this side of the page is going back to that dot. Does that make sense? So we've got 2 points to look at to draw the lines from. So basically the idea was to draw a barn, and we were trying to draw kind of an old-fashioned looking red barn. And the reason being is just red contrasts nicely with some white snow if you were creating a snowy landscape. So try to keep your white on the ground really clean when you're doing this picture so that that red barn really stands out. And right now what I'm doing is just outlining it with a black crayon. If you have black marker, you could also do that. It's up to you. And then I could also use a black colored pencil. I know that several of fifth grader classes had some colored pencils, and you're welcome to use those to create this. But you're going to try to create that vivid red look of a nice red barn. And again, refer back to the picture that I showed you during my intro to see what I'm talking about. So I left some snow at the top. We've got the snow on the ground. And so we didn't do a lot to the ground other than some shadows and shading. That's all.